We are on, Chris. What's up?
What's going on, Jay? How are you?
Doing good, doing good.
Good to hear it. Good to hear it. Welcome to everyone out there. This is on the On the Rocks podcast, the podcast where we talk about accounting and accounting related stuff, mostly as it relates to e-commerce, but not only. As Jay talked about, he's Jay Kimmelman, and I'm Chris Gino, and here we go. Last week we talked about Amazon, how they're taking all of our money, and how as an e-commerce seller there are pros and cons to utilizing their marketplace. We talked about those things. And they are things that you should definitely consider if you're looking to take that plunge, and go back and listen to it because it was really good conversation around what Amazon gives you, and around what Amazon doesn't give you. Uh, today, this week, we're going to do a little bit of reflecting. We're going to consider we're going to do some looking back and consider quality control. So we'll talk about that as it relates to accounting firms. So what does QC mean? What is even quality control at all? How should you consider executing it, or what kind of steps should you take when you're doing quality control? And then when should you be doing quality control? We'll talk about all of that stuff, and we'll also try to interweave in there like ideas around e-commerce entities or just other business entities in general as it comes to quality control. But first, what happened this week? The good news is April 15th was Monday. It's gone. It's in the past.
Done.
It's in the
Yes.
past. There were.
Done.
It appears that it's not done though, because there were 19 million returns extended, which means we still have 19 million returns to do out there as a profession, or people do. Somebody does. So there's still a lot of work to be done. We're not off the
Now,
hook yet.
I'm curious. So there's 19 million 1040s or total of 19 million?
Oh yeah,
So
yeah,
there
like
could be more than that. But yeah, there's still a lot of
yeah,
returns to be done.
that's right. Mhm.
For sure.
And so, and this year, the statistics came out. The average refunds were just a pinch higher than they were last year. So people are getting tax refunds on their as they complete their tax return. So let's be clear about that. I know it's easy to get those mixed up sometimes, especially if you don't sit in them all day. But that
Right.
means that on average, the average person was floating the government an extra percentage point or so during the year. But that means that we were probably pretty close. So.
But
So
that's based on refunds. So
yeah,
I was seeing a lot of posts about having to owe money this year that people didn't
yeah.
have to do in the past. And was it last week or the week before we talked about 1 in 4 millennials needing to see a
Oh yeah,
therapist after doing their taxes? Well, I
yeah,
think it's 2 in 4 have to see a therapist after doing their W-4.
yeah.
So
I think that that's probably true. The W-4 form is a hot mess, but I will shout out the W-4 form. Like I mentioned, I filed my taxes personally on Monday as well. I did it through the free file option. Shout out to my W-4 though. I got a $44 refund. 44. That's less than $100. Big W-4 win. They work if you do them right, I guess. Maybe I did them right. Hope so. One thing that I realized as I actually did the final filing, though, for my own personal return, was through that e-filing system, you have to input all of the information for your W-2s, and because you have to like basically put a copy in so that there's a record of it. I guess I'm not really sure exactly why you have to do that through free file, but that took me a little bit of extra time. And then there was 1099 information that you had to add if you had certain kinds of 1099s. I didn't have those kinds, so didn't matter. But yeah, it did. We talked about it last week, or maybe even the week before. It was last week, I think,
yeah, it's
where we
all a
talked
blur
about me doing.
anyway.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. Recently, we talked about it recently about how I did the tax return on my own and used the free file resource that's out there, through IRS.gov, and free fillable forms or whatever, where I'm populating my own forms and the amount of time that it took. And I realized that it took me probably about 30 minutes more, because I had to key punch in all the W-2 information for both myself and my wife. I did go find my daughter's social security number, and get that updated properly. But I had forgotten to put in her birthday, so I had to fail. The first time I tried to file, it said, "Nope, nope, nope, can't do it. You have this error. Your baby doesn't have a birthday." So I had to had to update that. So there were at least some controls. Speaking of quality control, the e-filing system has some quality control for you there.
So, quick question: did you get immediate feedback on that?
I did, which
Okay.
was nice. Well, it wouldn't let me file at all. So, and
Okay.
it may be free fillable forms was like, hey, you have a box that needs to not be empty. That's empty.
Mm-hmm.
Please fill in the thing. So when I was clicked the submit button, it said, hey, too bad you can't do that. Here's why. And it was actually very clear. It was this is the problem that you have. So it was actually immediate feedback
Right.
and like very, very well communicated feedback, which I think is the thing we'll talk about as far as quality control goes too.
Yeah.
And I think that that's a lot different than certain times when you may mail in something to the IRS, you may not get that feedback quite the same way.
True.
And
Well,
so
even when we e-file, we get cryptic messages back and saying, "Hey, it got rejected due to this," and the only information we get is to call the e-filing help desk for help with your filing issues, and then they say, "Yeah, you don't have a power of attorney. Yeah, you need to call the other line. Yeah, we can't help you." So
Yeah. Well, in this particular case, this was before the return even got submitted across. So
yeah,
this was the software itself, or the free fileable form, or whatever, free fillable file form, whatever the thing is. It was before I even kicked it over, so I didn't have to go through getting rejected or anything like that. The good news is I didn't get rejected. I did get it. It was accepted within the 24-hour window that it said it was going to be. So
nice.
that was splendid. That part was great. But yeah, that was a nice fun experience. Speaking of that, though, I know oh gosh, what's his name? Danny Werfel, right? The IRS commissioner. He was doing some. I don't know if he was doing like a monthly presser. I have no idea why he was talking, but
I believe he was talking to Congress.
oh yeah, is that a thing
I think
he has
was
to do
giving Congress an
regularly?
update. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, great. Well, while he was doing that, one of the things that he mentioned is that one of the initiatives from the IRS side is to be a digital first IRS, which I think is a really great thing because Jay, I think you can probably speak from experience that having a more functional digital environment will probably be huge for everyone as it comes to tax prep and other tax stuff. What do you think about digital first?
Oh, I think it's tremendous. And, the thing is, it's not about the tax prep, it's about the customer service. We
Yeah,
need, not only we as in tax professionals, but we as taxpayers need access to our information. And we need it at our fingertips. We need it when we need it, and we need it right away. And
yeah,
they have built the tax accounts and made that possible. And even so, as a tax professional, I can go in and put a request in. Let's say I want access to your account. I can go through my portal, request your information. As long as I have specifics about you, you would then be able to go to your portal and approve it. And then 10 minutes later, I can go on in there and pull your transcripts. So,
yeah. That would be great.
they're making progress. They sure are.
Yeah,
And, the whole point of this was it 80 million or 80 billion dollars that they were getting that they've pulled back 20 of at this point was to
sure.
do things just like that.
Right.
And
Super valuable.
it's super valuable, and it's not
Yep.
about going in and holding the US taxpayer hostage for more money. It's about providing support and collecting
Yeah.
taxes that are owed.
Right.
So it's not they're not arming IRS agents and going out there to collect money.
No.
They're there to collect money, but do it the old-fashioned way,
Yeah, that's right. To make the process
using the
easier.
postal
To make it,
service.
yeah, right. The idea, right, is to make the process easier, to make it easier for everything, to make it
Right.
to make all of that just more functional.
Yep.
And speaking of that, then one of the other like initiatives that I don't know a whole lot of details about it, but I saw some statistics around it and some conversation around it. The IRS built their filing system. They're like I don't know, TurboTax knockoff or whatever. I don't remember what it's called, so that's pretty embarrassing. But
IRS
it,
Free File, I believe.
Oh, there you go.
I
Sure,
think
that's
that's what it
pretty.
is. Yeah.
It's a aptly named then, and it had about 100,000 users, which in the population of the like everything is not that many. But if those 100,000 users had a good experience and they tell their friend about their good experience and it doubles or triples over the next few years, then that can end up being another like huge time saver, especially for taxpayers who have pretty easy returns.
Yep.
Probably someone like myself. With just not a huge amount of complexity, that can be very easy for the taxpayer to do that work and
Yeah.
to use that system. The the average cost for that was about $1,000 a tax return, which I think is maybe a really good baseline for what your minimum fees should be, given that it costs the same thing for the IRS system.
Right.
But that probably won't, and we were talking about this before we went on air here. That probably won't be the case for long because the cost is the same. Like the cost isn't increasing. It doesn't have a lot of variable costs associated with it. And so once you have adoption at a higher level, the cost per return is going to go down. And so we don't need our fees to go down going forward. But it's nice to know that the IRS has been investing in resources that are intended to help people, and intended to make this process as easy and as possible, right?
Well, and as you're saying that, I'm thinking this through. It's like, well,
Yeah.
it's a set cost to do it, but every year we do have tax updates, so
Right.
there is a maintenance cost involved. And I mean, if
Sure.
I was going to design it, I know that the internal IRS system has to calculate everything. So why not build this off the same engine and just put a different front end on it?
Yeah.
And the front end doesn't need to change year after year, just as long as you're capturing the right information.
Yeah. As
So,
long as the data is right.
I'm oversimplifying the whole development side of
Sure.
it, but I mean, that's how accountants do software development. But yeah.
Yeah. Right. No, the main takeaway, right, is that this is a
Yeah.
tool that's going to be really effective, and it should do a lot of those simple returns. It should make them a lot easier to do, and it should mean that people, especially the most disenfranchised people, don't end up paying $50 for something that should be free, which in the long scheme of things, sure, $50 isn't much, but it can go a long way. That could be a couple meals. That can mean a lot to a family.
Especially today
For sure.
with inflation the way it is,
Yeah.
it's a huge deal.
Yeah, absolutely. Some other stuff that I saw that Joe Biden and the Senate, I think, were talking again about maybe actually pushing through the tax thing, or getting some final whip counts or something. But at least right now, I think we still, not surprisingly, don't have an update. But it looks like there might be more momentum to have something happen than we thought. I know that when we talked before, our expectation was that this is definitely a post-election thing. But it seems like there may be an appetite to actually do something pre-election. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there. And particularly if it's something that ends up being politically motivated in some way, that will be very interesting.
Right.
So no updates with respect to that now, of course. But once or whether something actually happens, we are going to keep it on the this is out there list, because it is relevant and it will eventually be very relevant. I know, Jay, that last weekend your daughter was out dancing, and I think
She was.
the reason that we're recording a little early today this week is because you've got some more like family activities related to that too. So
Yes.
so how did her dancing
weekend.
go?
Yeah, we had a great weekend last weekend, and Abby had 7 dances that she was competing in,
Yeah.
and 4 of them got the highest grade of platinum. 3 of them, including her 2 solos, got high gold, which was just under platinum, and that's what she needed
lovely.
to qualify her dances for nationals.
Let's
And
go.
as we talked about, my daughter's had some health issues, and she knocked it out of the park. She was full of energy. She was able to go take every dance that day, and they even backloaded her on there, and she had
boy.
4 of her last 7 dances in the last 2 hours. So she
Ooh.
had to knock him out. And to make
Yeah.
it worse, there was a technical difficulty in the middle of this thing. They were down for an hour because they couldn't connect to their server, which I don't know if they were retrieving music from or sending recordings to.
Oh,
But I'm
yeah.
like, you know
Okay.
what? Let me add it. Let me fix it for you. And honestly, I was one of those rebel rousers there, trying to
Yeah.
get things moving and trying to stir some
Right.
stuff up. But it was fun. It was fun.
Too funny. No,
Um,
that's lovely.
and very relatable to our topic last week. One of the
Yeah.
other teams had a dance called Amazon Prime, where
Oh,
a
yeah.
team of dancers, who were about 25 of them dressed as Amazon delivery men or persons, came
Yeah.
out with packages, and they did a whole song and dance number about delivering packages with Amazon. So it was
That's
very entertaining.
that's great. That's a connection between like real life and
For
the accounting
sure.
space. Once again,
Yep.
yeah, this always
Yep.
happens. I love it. Love it. Love it.
Always. Yep.
Yeah. That's great. Well, congratulations to Abby. I look forward to seeing how she does at
Yeah.
nationals
And like you
later in the
said,
year.
we're a little early this week because tomorrow we are heading up to Flagler College for
Yep.
Admitted Students Day, which is where she's going to be going in the fall. So we're going to go up there and get a sneak peek at what she
Nice.
should expect. And before
Lovely.
we do that, we're heading to Olympia High School tonight for awards night. So
Ooh, man,
update
you got a
next
lot of
week
fun.
on whatever award or
Yeah.
awards that Abby's getting this week. So
Yeah,
yeah,
we'll talk
it's
more
exciting.
about what's going on this weekend at the end as we typically do. So we'll revisit that and get all the good juicy content if we need it, or we'll just talk about it again next week.
Yeah, either.
One other thing that I saw as a report that I thought was pretty interesting was KPMG, I guess, does a yearly study or a yearly like questionnaire or something survey of the CEOs of some of the companies that they're affiliated with. These are big companies, so these aren't your small e-commerce businesses. It's 500 million in revenue up to like several billion. So they're good sized businesses, not your small business, not even really your mid market. These are big ones. But those CEOs, there were a few different things that they highlighted that they're looking at and thinking about. And one was a continued shift toward hybrid work, or really more of what was maybe an adoption of hybrid work in a like more permanent basis. So they did the same survey last year. Last year, these CEOs expected that they were going to go back to permanent work. Like 60% of them thought that permanent in the office. But this year, that number has slipped all the way down to like 30%, and so that number just gets smaller and smaller. And I think that speaks to a couple different things. The first one is that you can find good talent anywhere, and that means that you need to be flexible because if you want someone who can fill a role that you need and they just live somewhere else, we live in an environment now that allows you to still to still take that person's services, right? So I think that you'll continue to see hybrid work being very popular. Um, and then the second is that people want that too. I think a lot of people like working from home sometimes, the flexibility that it allows you. And so I'm sure there's been at least some pushback from some of the workforce on going to the office permanently. Like that's just not something that appeals to everyone. And so because of that, I think employees are taking a little bit of their power back, something like that maybe. Um,
You know,
they're the yeah.
so speaking of that, there are days when I wish I had a place to go to an office and get out of the house.
Sure.
I mean,
Yeah.
what are your thoughts on that? I mean,
Yeah.
personally.
Me personally, I don't feel that way. And I don't know why. I don't know if that's I don't have a teenage daughter in the house. I don't know if that's like the where my office is located in the house is segregated kind of from the rest of the house,
Yeah.
and so it's like I don't have the general house distractions. Although it would be nice every once in a while to not have the dogs like barking at me when I'm up here talking to you, that kind of thing. Um, I uh, I find that being in a space like this it allows me to focus on whatever it is I'm working on. And so because of that, I actually and I have the multiple monitor setup here, right? I have like all of that here, and so because of that, like I am used to that, and so maybe it's I'm comfortable with this now,
Mhm.
more than anything. Like I can imagine working on just the laptop in a coffee shop. I've done that before. Well, like we talked about, I even went outside. I used to, when right after we had the baby, I would work outside downstairs because it was pretty comfortable. But that's still here at home.
Yeah.
I do love getting outside, but and I think a lot of the like, especially when you're doing business analysis or like information analysis, like that does take a little bit of focus. And so if I personally was to go to a coffee shop and sit there or even um, I don't know, like a WeWork type space, right?
Hmm.
There's a lot of other activity that's going on, and
Oh,
so I could
very
see that
distracting.
being
It can be.
yeah, I could see that being a distraction,
Yeah.
which would defeat the purpose of going, right?
Yeah.
Because it's, like that's the idea is you're getting away from the distraction of home just to be distracted again. Like that doesn't
Yeah.
that's no good. I think if we get to some point where like the U.S. infrastructure of the like wireless infrastructure for the U.S. is where you can go to a park, you could sit down and you could be like working remotely from a park or something like that. I think I'd do that more frequently. I think than to like actually go to a building, just to enjoy nature. I do love getting outside. So yeah, I don't ever find myself being like, God, I really wish I could get out of here today.
Yeah.
But I don't know if that's I don't know exactly the reasons for it.
Yeah. There's like once a month, I'll have a morning. It's like, "Ah, I wish I could just go somewhere else. You know,
Yeah.
just get me out of here." But you are right. I mean, you have your screens, you have all of that, familiarity and your tools that you're working with. But I
Yeah.
mean, imagine if we actually had those glasses that you could actually see your spreadsheets in their glasses and be able to do what you need to do. Oh my God, it would be awesome.
Minority Report style. Yeah, it would be.
Yeah, for sure.
It's probably in our lifetime still, Jay. It's not that far out there.
Yeah,
Um,
I
another,
bet using VR, some of it might be
yeah,
out there.
yeah, probably
I've
already.
not
Yeah.
messed with any of that yet, but I think it
No,
might
no,
be
me
out there.
neither.
So
Me neither.
cool.
So another couple of things that the CEOs from KPMG that their survey they also are very supportive of generative AI. Almost all of them had some use case for generative AI in their business somewhere, and the majority of these CEOs were also interested in paying to continue to incorporate it and to use it more frequently. So if you're not comfortable with AI and those types of tools, then you best get that way, or you will get left behind. It is just a matter of time. Um, and then one other thing that I thought was worth highlighting is that these CEOs also see and expect a significant increase in investment in ESG, and particularly around sustainability. And personally, I'm glad to see that because I love to be sustainable as much as possible. I really dislike wasting stuff, and so knowing that the CEOs of these big companies are also interested in the environmental impacts and the sustainability of their choices is what I thought was a very positive sign. I was very glad to see that, and I'm hopeful that that's true of the market as a whole, and not just the big companies for sure. Um, what uh, what other news is out there this week, Jay? What do we miss?
Uh, well, I was trying to think of this when you were talking about the Senate taking up the tax bill. At least the Senate did something. They did take
Yeah,
up the impeachment, even though they threw that out immediately. They did something. I mean,
right.
uh, but I'm really curious if we will see a tax bill now that you mention it, because the House is putting up all of those support bills, the funding
Oh
bills.
yeah, for
So
yeah, for,
I don't know if there's going to
um,
need to be deals made to get them passed.
yeah,
We just got to see what's going to happen. So
yeah.
other
It'll
than
be
that, it's
yeah,
it's a lull week. It's that week after that tax deadline, and the
yeah.
accounting
Well, and
world
that
tends to go on
yeah.
vacation.
Well,
Except us.
or they do a debrief or what did you call it, Jay?
Post mortem.
Post mortem, yes, absolutely.
Yes.
So let's move into quality control. Today it's Thursday. It's also a little bit earlier in the day. So Dre, I don't know about you. I'm just drinking water. I assume that you're doing the same. So we'll
Same
skip
here.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like lunchtime right now. It's maybe sure it's 5 o'clock somewhere, but I have work to do after this. So maybe
For
next week or the
sure.
week following we'll get back to unusual beverages of choice or something. So like we mentioned, with the April 15th deadline in the rearview mirror, several tax accountants and tax teams are taking this time to do a debrief, a postmortem of their practice. That's identifying what went well, but also what went poorly. Or maybe I should phrase that the other way. That's identifying what went poorly, but also what went well. So I think that is an important thing to take away from quality controls. It's not just amplifying and highlighting the bad, but it's also like reminding of the good and reinforcing the good. The
Right.
purpose of these reviews is call it quality control and continuous improvement. So today, that's exactly what we're going to talk about. We thought it'd be interesting to talk about what quality control means to us, and to give some tips and pointers on what we should do. And I think Jay, you're going to be particularly well suited for this because you did this earlier today.
Correct.
And so and so so I think this is the perfect time for that. So what is quality control? Most of the time, I think when people think of quality control, particularly in the like accounting space, you think of evaluating engagement performance. So how do you keep from having errors? How did the supervision and oversight of the work go? Like, do we need to do more of it or less of it? Like that kind of thing. And then how do you improve efficiency and effectiveness? All right. And so we'll
Yep.
talk a little bit more about that. But I wanted to first say, like, quality control is actually a lot more than that too, though. Um, a lot of the postmortems and the follow-ups afterwards are actually a topic that the AICPA talks about in their like standards of quality control for CPA firms as monitoring. So that's like going back and looking, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're
Yep.
checking what happened, you're checking in with what happened, you're following up with your team about what's going on. But there are several other aspects of quality control that I just want to like point out as well. One of them is tone at the top, right? Is what do your leaders think about quality control? How do they care about this? They Your hiring practices are a method of quality control, and so your whole HR system can be a part of your quality control, because if you're hiring people who are going to be able to do the job well because you have good standards for who you're hiring, that helps you in your quality.
Yep.
Um, the same thing exists on the onboarding side. So from client onboarding and client acceptance, like who you're in business with and who you're working with is a part of of quality control as well. So I wanted to definitely bring those things up, and we can talk about that a little bit later. But because I think that also applies to just businesses in general, like all that whole framework can be really like it's from the AICPA, but it can apply to any kind of business. But before we talk about those types of things, let's talk about that postmortem, that evaluation of engagement performance. So Jay, do you want to walk through what we did, or do you want to talk about a little bit of how that goes for you?
Yeah, so we started with what were our goals for this year? What were we trying to achieve?
Mm,
What did we learn last year that we wanted to improve on, and did we? How did we measure against what we intended to do?
yeah,
And overall, it was a very positive postmortem. Now, of
yeah,
course, last year was a transition year, and we had a lot to improve on.
yeah,
And we came into this year with a new system. We actually added a coordinator in the middle of it to help with some of the administrative work. So I was used to
mm,
doing a lot of that. We put
yeah,
different time frames on different milestones, and it was all about reaching those milestones and getting that done for us.
right,
And the other thing was, what was the customer experience? We want to make
right,
sure that we're delivering that higher than expected experience, and that's to me that is number one. It's 1A. One
sure,
B is everything's correct on that tax return.
right, yeah,
You
exactly.
know, everything is right, and then from there, are we doing planning? Are we doing estimates? Things like, well, we're probably delivering estimates with the return, but are we
Yeah,
doing estimates throughout the rest of the year based on activity, things like that, so that we can
right,
set up the engagement through the rest of the year? Now, for those returns that we've extended, what have we learned in the last 3 months that we could apply now, or what new technology can we employ now that we could test, that
Yeah.
we can see how it works, what the clients think, what the experience is, that if it does work, we can put it into place next year. And as far as, getting that new season, and rolling out a new organizer, let's say, or a new engagement method, so things along those lines. Because
Yeah.
even though we passed that extension deadline, we still bring on new tax clients, between now and September and October. So
Sure.
we can use that to test the engagement process and tweak it so that we can put those changes in come, January.
Next year, right? Yeah, absolutely. And so that lends itself to a thing that I wanted to talk about too, is of when should you do like this quality evaluation, the quality control evaluation. And I think what you mentioned is really really important, right? Is to some degree, like, you should be doing quality control like kind of all the time. So
Right.
so somebody should be reviewing what's going on, right? People don't think about it, but when someone has prepared a return and someone is reviewing a return, that is part of quality control.
For sure.
And so there should be some kind of quality control happening all the time. And then I think that we both agree that continued maintenance and monitoring of progress, and especially like well outlined plans related to that, is really, really important. And then specific monitoring can be really, really impactful when there's big problems that come up, right? So you identify, like, this is a problem, we need to resolve this now.
Right.
And you can, and so that you can troubleshoot it and you can fix it. And it's also monitoring can be really valuable. That's why it happens right now, of when the workload allows for like a committed time, right? So that you
Right.
can actually like mean it and not just check it off a list, right? You want that postmortem that you're some postmortem that you're working on, like, doesn't do any good if you're just like doing it quickly, right? And you're just like breezing it over. But if you truly are committing to it and building out a plan, like, that becomes the most important thing, right? That's exactly how it becomes effective.
And you asked, when do you do it? I mean, here we are 3 days removed. So it's
Right.
fresh in our minds. We know what's going
Yep.
on. If we didn't do it now, and let's say we did it, after we came back from the Memorial Day holiday, we're going to forget about a lot of things. And,
Right.
By that point, we won't be able to put certain things in place because, for me, I see a lull between April 15th and, let's say, June 15th.
Sure.
No, unless we're doing accounting books and we're specifically getting the books ready for tax returns, most people are not thinking about taxes until it's almost time to go back to school. They're thinking about it, early August, maybe late July, and then they're thinking, then we're still having to pull that data out of them and coax it out of them at that point. So this is a great time to actually make those changes to process and procedures and test it. And then again, come April 16th, the 18th, we're going to do it all over again. Did I say April? I mean October. So
sure.
After the October deadline, we'll do it all over again and do another postmortem. And then take our notes from April, our notes from October, put things that did work there, and start working on that process moving forward.
And I think that's really good to think about. And I know that those particular dates are hugely impactful to tax professionals specifically, right? Because those are tax related deadlines. But that time of year, those same two times of year actually can be a really good time for like bookkeeping or other advisory professionals to do the same type of thing, because the ends of months are typically a little bit lighter, right? You have a little bit more flexibility, and you want to make sure that you also have a quality control process in place to make sure that the delivery of the information that you're giving to your clients is good, and getting feedback from a tax team or a tax partner can be really valuable in that, because that can be an indicator for you of areas where you may have where you may have had problems or may have issues, or you may have extra information that they need that you can incorporate into your own, like even if your process is perfect and working great, there may be extra bits of information that you can start to incorporate to facilitate those other types of partnerships. So I really like at least a couple times a year, and certainly I think quarterly is pretty reasonable. And then anytime that you have big projects that have ended, that's kind of what you're talking about, right? Is the 4/15 and 10/15 deadlines. Like those are, sure, you're working on lots of different projects, but that's a very, very clear cutoff, right? And I think that doing the, like you talked about, right? Sure, maybe you give yourself a week to take your vacation so you can like have a breather, and not so that your mind is fresh too. Like I think that's important, but you don't want to take like a month and a half,
Right.
because you want the things, particularly the like things that you know of are as improvement items. You want them to be top of mind and fresh, so that you can address them and that you can come up with solutions that are pretty reasonable. So I think that that's true, and I mentioned that that's true of bookkeeping and advisory professionals, but that's also going to be true for just businesses in general, right? When you're doing monitoring, you want to be doing it regularly. You don't want to do it just once a year. You don't want to do it just like on occasion or when you have a big mess happen. You want to regularly be evaluating and monitoring your control system so that you understand what's good and what's bad and how it's working and everything else. So I think that's an extremely important thing to think about and to talk about too.
One
Go ahead,
other
Dave.
point to bring up there as well, though, as we're going through some of those conversations, we're also reflecting on some of the clients we've talked to and looked at what their needs are. Some of those clients might have had tax situations change, or they might have a banner year last year, or they're expecting a banner year next year. And that's another time where we can actually, put plans together to meet with the clients and make sure that they're getting their needs met, so that they're protected and they have a plan
Right.
going into the current tax year.
Yeah.
You're looking at it in April. It's way too early in the year to predict what they're going to do. There's
Sure.
so much time left. So you get to July and October, you still have time left to enact change. So you
Right.
want to know those clients who you need to speak to and make sure you're noting that, so that you can make sure you book the time to do so.
Yeah. And so I think that that's actually a really good segue into the next topic of how you should execute your quality control and how you should go about this, because there's loads of different things that you can do, right? Your postmortem, the one that we had earlier today, involved talking with your team, right? It was a conversation with a team. I think you want feedback from everyone involved, because you want to know like where things are going good and where things are going bad, and the easiest and most effective way to do that is to ask the people who are doing it.
Yep.
You also want to make sure that you're reviewing like your training documents or your documentation, right? If you have an SOP for how you should be executing something or how you should be doing something, you want to make sure that it's still working. You want to make sure that it's still happening in the right way, so that or that parts of it need to be taken out because you're not doing that part or you're skipping that part, or you want to make sure that you understand how effective those things are. And then this is more like was always more like an audit thing, but like actually looking at or inspecting files. So like work paper support, or using specific client examples of like, here's a thing that happened, or a thing that we want to make sure that our work papers have this kind of feel to them or whatever. Actually looking at them can be really helpful too in making sure that you know where things are going and what they're doing. One of the most important things, though, is that communication is like the most important factor of this. Because if you just go and evaluate all this, but you don't tell anybody and you don't make any change, you're not going to have any change.
Right.
And so communication is the key. And so it's important that you make decisions, right? So when you're doing a postmortem or you're doing some type of evaluation, the first thing that you need to do is you need to have decisions happen. You need to have some type of progress that comes out of this. Now, maybe that's continued status quo, but that's still a decision. And then you need to you need to make sure that those decisions are communicated to the team, to the relevant parties. Normally, you'll do that in some type of formal communication. And it may be just in that postmortem conversation, right? It could be informal as well, of just like, hey, let's, on the ones going forward, we're going to do this instead, right? And but you want to make sure that that's communicated, and you want to make sure that the documents around it are updated too, right? So that you have all of that. So the plans for improvement, those need to be documented too. You need to understand whether you need training plans of like, hey, I realize now, because we're getting this type of client a little more frequently, we need to have a better understanding of this concept. Right. And so you want to outline a training procedure for your internal team, and maybe also a training procedure for your clients of, we really struggled with this particular question on the form, like on our intake form this year. Like, let's put together a scribe of how someone needs to see this, or what we're looking for.
Right.
You want to do, like I was talking about, you want to update your forms, update your processes, make sure that any kind of information that you're getting in is in the form that you want it to be, as much as you can do. And then of course, any good plan has, next steps, like where are we going now?
Yep.
And those things need to be communicated really well. And so I think anytime you're doing some type of true big review, that's going to be very clear. But at the same time, anytime that you're doing a smaller review, or a on the spot review, or a review of someone's work, like those things still remain like relevant, because you still want to communicate. This looks really good. We should use this more often, or hey, I can tell by the way that this was filled out that maybe there's something we need to teach you about this particular concept. Like those opportunities don't need to wait for the postmortem. And in fact, if it's something like teaching and training, like they shouldn't.
Exactly. Yeah.
So what? Yeah, go ahead, Jake.
You mentioned immediate feedback because most of the people were there in the meeting, but
right.
There's also feedback for the accounting team, so that will be forthcoming. Making sure that there are certain things that might have been noted in returns this year. Making sure that things like basis are being looked at and being addressed with the clients. Especially those where people are taking lots of distributions and salaries, and making sure we have reasonable salaries on S corps, things along those lines. So it's an overall process that impacts everybody in the organization. It's not just for the tax side. So it is completely. It is a complete review of everything that touches tax. And it reverberates throughout the firm, so everybody gets to see some of it.
And it's the same too. Like it's outside of the firm too, because the client that needs a different salary, right? Because their $10,000 a year salary is not really market rate, right? Like that they need to have that understanding too, right? And it impacts them, and so that communication you're right, that there needs to be like a full evaluation of that, and to that too, like as you mentioned, I think like we were talking about, this time of year also allows for a good reflection point on the other operating lines that you might potentially have, right? If you're a tax professional, you may very well be doing bookkeeping and bookkeeping support, or other types of advisory. I mean, like we do. This becomes a good time to just review everything together, so that you do have that holistic view of how your operations are impacting each other, because that is a part of overall quality control. Because if your accounting team is doing something that then makes your tax person's life just an absolute cluster, like you need to fix it, right? And then from the same perspective, right? If somebody on your accounting team is doing something like wonderfully, you want to be able to highlight that, and then potentially like allocate that out to the rest of the team, so that everybody understands and you can have that continuous improvement. What other thoughts do you have about quality control, Jay?
So a lot of it isn't necessarily about what doesn't go wrong either. I mean, it's not about finding finding things to fix. A lot of
Yeah.
it is about what did we do right, and
Right.
celebrating some wins.
Yep.
And some of that is looking at metrics. Uh, time to completion,
Yeah.
time to clients go from engagement to organizer, and things like that, and finding wins
Right.
there, and celebrating it, because it is such a, I mean, it's 2.5 months, but it is a long 2.5 months.
Yeah.
So when you can celebrate, it's time to do that,
Right.
and really embrace it. So, and taking those wins and letting everybody know that these things are out there. Now, I did say earlier that, we did uncover something today, that one of the
Yeah.
preparers came back, that was an oversight. Well, yeah, sometimes that does happen. So
It happens.
it does. And
Yep.
when you're pushing a volume out, it does happen. So it's not about dwelling on the mistake. It's about putting
Nope.
procedures in place to make sure it doesn't happen again.
Yeah. And I think that at High Rock we've always called that particular idea the fail and learn, right?
Fail and
You
learn.
made a mistake,
Yeah.
you blew it. All right, what did we learn from it?
Yeah.
And that idea of continuous improvement is kind of what quality control is all about, because you're not going to be perfect all the time. Like that's just an unrealistic goal,
Most
and so
definitely.
because of that, the best you can do is the best that you did, and you can use those opportunities where that best ended up not quite good enough. Like you can use those opportunities to find efficiencies, to, like you were talking about before, find opportunities for using technology, to find opportunities to streamline processes overall. Again, of maybe stealing someone else's idea that they did the same thing, but they did it in a different way. And
Right.
if you do it that way, you'll get a good opportunity here. And it's also a
Yep.
good opportunity to outline like teaching and training points, because if this happened to one person on your team, the likelihood that it could happen to someone else is very real.
Right.
And so refreshing the rest of your team on that particular pitfall can be really powerful, because you're reinforcing the good stuff. Same thing that you talked about before.
And luckily, in this situation, it's not the end of the world. The
Yeah,
return was not incorrect.
that
It
is
was
good.
it was a matter of something not being read on the organizer properly,
Mm,
and it will be resolved with one or maybe two or a dozen calls to the IRS. But it's easily fixable.
you're right.
So
Right.
it's what the key is to make sure that your processes catch those things
Right.
where it does impact the return. You don't want
Yep.
it to have a mistake that's going to cost the client or you a penalty, a fee, anything along those lines. And
Yeah,
luckily,
absolutely.
that was not the case. So
This time, right? So,
yeah.
it is a good reminder too of like we're professionals, but we're not perfect. And so outlining the things that where we had fail points can be very powerful in building the resources that help you to do it going forward, because
Hmm.
it obviously happened for whatever reason in this case, and
Right.
so it may mean we need to have a second set of eyes on this particular thing going forward, or it may mean like we do a checklist at the end or something of like did we look at this,
Yeah.
and so there can be lots of different outputs from things that you find and identify as areas to improve. And to that same perspective, like there can be lots of different outputs from areas that you're doing things well.
Right.
And so doing a holistic review can really help improve your practice.
Yeah.
The the last like area that I wanted to like talk about kind of as it relates to quality control is quality control in the business environment. And
Hmm.
so I mentioned this before, like tone at the top, monitoring, client acceptance, hiring practices, like those things are all relevant to businesses too. And I think that it's very important that the companies have in place some type of procedure to address those types of things of how do we choose who we hire, how do we make sure that the leadership and the ownership of our company is providing the like right base for us to be doing our business in the way that we want, right? And there are lots of ways to do that and lots of ways to monitor that. I feel like, especially with your nutraceutical business, Jay, like quality control is probably like extremely critical. So I'm really interested in your feedback on like product level or engagement level quality control at an entity like that, and then just overall business quality control.
Yeah. So when you're dealing with ingestibles, anything that's a food product, quality control is really, really important.
Right.
And, product comes off the production line, and, we always kept the sample. We always tasted the sample. We always had that sample tested for, lab tested for make sure it didn't have microbials and it met all the specs. So, all of that goes into quality control. But more important than that, we knew it was also going, possibly going to be on a shelf at a customer. So was the label straight? Was it, did it look right? I mean, all of that came into account. And at one point we were selling, I think it was 5-pound boxes of protein powder that was going into smoothies. And basically we had, it was like a 12 by 12 box with a bag inside of it. And you lay it out and put it on the production line and go through, and you seal it up and seal the bag and tape it. And at one point there was protein powder on the outside of the boxes, and that was not acceptable.
Right.
Yeah, it's like, at least seal them up, or before you seal them. And what got me though was it was under the tape. So you could see the tape and you could see the white protein powder. And I was like, no, that's not going to fly. So at least, wipe it off, blow it off. So we actually put that into the production line. You put an air system that blew air on it and blew anything off of it.
Yeah.
You tape it and it looked good, because you want it.
Right.
It's got to look good, because in that case, when it's going through, UPS, FedEx, whomever, if it's sitting somewhere and you have a food product on the outside of it, what's going to be attracted to it? Insects. You don't want that.
Snag it.
It's got to look good. And then from, as the business owner, this is one of the things I talked about. We couldn't ship it fast enough. So part of quality is making sure the clients get their orders when they want it, and they're getting what they want, and they're getting what they ordered. And so we would also, verify that, and we would actually call customers and make sure that they were satisfied with what they received. So we were doing that for a couple of purposes. We were double checking that we shipped the right product, and then we were also making sure they were happy and trying to upsell at the same time.
Of course.
Quality control doesn't mean you're not always selling either. So,
well, and that really does outline how quality control is holistic, right? Because you talked about who's our delivery partner. Like if you think about an e-commerce business, right? Who's your 3PL? Like you need that person to be on the same page as you. You need them to want the same things that you want. You need them to provide the level of quality that you're going to provide and that you want to provide. And so that's the same evaluation that you'd have with Amazon, right? Like those types of things. It's and then it's the same on the incoming side, right? You don't want obviously you don't want your vendor to be giving you lousy product, right? This is an important thing,
right?
And so quality control touches all aspects of kind of all businesses. And I think actually, Jay, it's probably a perfect title for today's episode is "Take a Taste of Your Tax Practice" or something.
There you go.
Because it's the same idea, right? Because that is what we're talking about. Is you have a product that you're delivering, and you want to evaluate how that product tastes, right? How does that taste to the end user of the product? What went good? What went bad? Is this what I want to put in my smoothie?
Right. Exactly.
And
I did forget one of the most important parts of quality control, and that was making sure that the weight of the product was appropriate. So we actually had a scale system that it had an upper and lower limit, and if it again, if it didn't pass, it pushed it off to the side, and manually we would adjust it and make sure it met the needs. So
Yeah,
uh,
and that's
and again, I learned all that from a pharmaceutical company because that's
right.
why I worked before that, and
Yeah,
it was every day was continually improving that because
yeah,
if when you're doing well, it wasn't that, it was thousands of vials a minute.
yeah.
Those costs, if it was 0.001 cents, you had too much product in it, was huge. So
Just
it
adds
was
up.
every day they were doing improvement on that quality line. So it's
Yeah,
really important, whether it's tax returns, pharmaceutical products, food product, or baseball
whatever,
gloves, baseball bats, baseball gloves, whatever it happens to be.
whatever it is,
Yeah.
anything, absolutely anything. And I do think that that's a really, like, you don't think about that necessarily as a tax professional of like, hey, how is this impacting my profitability? But if you have some part of your process that's causing the someone in the line to just be like, God, this takes me forever. If you're monitoring it and evaluating it, you can start to take those things out, right? To
Yeah.
remove those roadblocks and to to identify opportunities for using less time, and maybe even opportunities like you're talking about to upsell, because you may be able to have that conversation with your client about, hey, I know it's the April 30th or whatever. We'd love to talk about how this process went for you. Oh, by the way, June is coming up soon. Do you want to talk about what you want to do this next year? Right? Would you be interested in like then an extra add-on service, right? An
Yeah.
upsell.
Yeah.
So so customer satisfaction and customer satisfaction surveys too are a measure and an evaluation of quality control. You may not think about it that way right off, but it's exactly what they are.
Most definitely.
So what else do we want to talk about with respect to quality control today, Jay?
I I can't think
Do
of
it.
anything else.
That's right.
I was trying to segue onto something else,
Yeah.
quality control, but I can't think of anything at the moment.
So one of the things that when my mother-in-law, when she makes rolls for Thanksgiving and for Christmas and for lots of different things, and one of my favorite things to do is the quality control, because you gotta make sure that the rolls tasting good. So
Well,
snag one, eat that one. Quality control is really really good for you. It can be really really valuable. It's a fantastic thing. Always do quality control, and be thinking about it all the time, right? That's true. um,
for sure.
so yeah. So speaking of my mother-in-law, so here's your segue, Jay. She's coming this weekend. So mother-in-law's coming up to watch the baby. So wife and I can get out and go to the symphony this weekend. So I'm pretty stoked for that. I'm pretty excited for that. Jay, do you want to talk more about your trip upcoming, or did we touch all the good details already?
We touched on that, but it's funny that as I was trying to think of a segue, I was trying to think of a way to get pizza in that
Oh, I
conversation,
know. I thought about
and
that
you
too.
brought rolls right into it. So
Yeah.
for me, quality control there. So last Friday we finished our
Uh-huh.
Amazon session, and
Yeah.
my wife's like, "Hey, I want a calzone." I'm like, "No problem." So
I
I
got you.
actually took two doughs out of the freezer, and busted out I made a cheesy bread and a sausage calzone, and she's like, "Oh my god, it was great." Now my wife is like, "No, not pizza again." Always. It's like every week. Why do we have to do that? So that was Friday. Monday night, she's like, "Hey, go make another calzone."
Mm.
That's a win right there.
Yeah, that's a
So
quality control success.
yes,
Um,
most definitely.
Absolutely.
And
And that,
so, and unfortunately, because we are heading up to St. Augustine tomorrow, we haven't made pizza dough this week. There will be no pizza this weekend because I'm
that is a
actually getting
bummer.
on a plane on Monday. So, it's going to be a busy weekend. We actually have Abby's prom on Saturday, so we
Oh
got
my
pictures
gosh, yeah.
coming. So it's a busy,
Exciting.
busy weekend.
Yeah, no kidding.
And you're
Goodness.
heading out now. I won't spoil your news there. You're
Wait,
heading to
where?
out of
Next
town.
weekend? Oh yeah, that's next weekend though.
Oh, it's next weekend. Oh,
Yeah, no, that's next
sorry.
weekend. So yeah,
Sorry.
so we're
More
gonna
on that next week.
Yeah, more on that next week. No, it's it'll be a fun. This should be a fun weekend. Like I said,
Yeah.
we're going to the symphony. That'll be fun.
There you go. That's it.
My wife and I keep a list of local restaurants that we want to try, and we're knocking one off this weekend as well. We're going to go have the best buns in Dallas. Oh, I can't remember. Oh my gosh, what are they? The like Chinese buns. I can't. Do they have some other
Bell
name?
buns.
Bao's. Yeah, Bao buns. Yes, there you
Yeah.
go. Best Bao buns in Dallas. I think
Nice.
this the place that we're going is certainly one of the best ones, and we've not ever been there, so I'm pretty excited for that.
Very cool.
Should be a good time, and then we're going to see I think it's a Cirque style show at the Symphony, which is a fun combination of stuff. So. Kayla, my wife, she's been looking forward to this particular show. It's the last one in our package this year. We used to live like a 10-minute walk from the Symphony Center, so we had pretty regular tickets over there.
Yeah.
And then moving to the suburbs, it's a little bit more of a commitment. Plus, having a baby, we've got to do something. Can't just leave her here. So we have to do a little bit more planning as it comes to that. But this was the one that she was like, I really want to go to this. So we're pretty excited to do that. Thought we might not be able to go for a while because our tickets were actually originally for Saturday night. But on Saturday night, the Symphony, the Dallas Symphony's young professional group, kind of did a takeover, and they're doing some like fancy dinner in advance and like a little special show. So afterwards, so they're truncating truncating the show and then doing their young professionals ball or something like that night. So they asked us if we'd either pay more to do that or be willing to move to a different day. And so
There you go.
we wanted to see the whole show, so we moved our tickets from Saturday to Friday. So looking forward to that tomorrow. Should be good fun.
It's great having that
the weather
flexibility
also
to do that.
Yeah, right. No kidding. Yeah, really lucky there. Hey, could be because I'm working at home, right? To circle all the way back to hybrid work. Probably wouldn't have that opportunity if I was working in downtown Dallas or somewhere because the traffic would be terrible. But because I'm here, I'll have a little bit more flexibility and the ability to go do that. So
For sure.
hybrid plus on the side of hybrid work, and certainly or remote work in this case. Yeah. Are we expecting anything big next week? I know you said you're traveling. You're going to something for Zero. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to attend a Zero kickoff in Denver. So
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to
That's
that.
exciting. Yeah. Or is there going to be big news out of it? Do you know?
I
We'll find
doubt
out.
it. I did check the weather forecast because in the last 6 years I've been to one of these things, we've always had snow, but
Oh,
it's going to
boy.
be in the lowest temperature is going to be like 60. So
Oh my
that's
gosh!
out.
There you go.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's
one of my
perfect.
favorite memories. We went to a. I just lost it all of a sudden. We went
Yeah, you went
to
somewhere. Zero.
a,
Best memories.
golf.
It'll come
golfing,
back.
Outdoor golfing. Top.
Yeah. Top golf. Yeah.
Top golf.
Sure.
We went to a Top Golf.
Okay.
Whiteout. I mean, hitting out into a whiteout. It was amazing. Hitting
Oh,
golf
wow,
balls
yeah.
in a blizzard like snow. It was
Yeah.
so fun. And
Yeah,
not
that-
having to wear jackets because they had those huge heaters there. So you got on
Oh.
there. It was amazing time that time. That was my second one of those. But yeah, I love going to these meetings. I love spending time with the Zero folks and helping them and learning from them. And yeah.
Yeah, well, I'm sure that if there are big announcements out of that, we'll have something fun to talk about next week. So that'll be fun.
For sure.
Who knows? Maybe Congress will have made some more progress, and we'll have like a
Maybe.
huge thing to talk about. Who knows? Otherwise, Jay, safe travels this weekend. I know you got.
Thank
Hopefully, the school is just as nice as your daughter hopes, and she's
For sure.
she's super stoked to get up there. Although I can imagine anyway that you're not that stoked to actually let her go. So
Yeah.
so So don't ruin it, Jay. Don't ruin it.
Yeah. It's gonna be an awesome weekend. Looking forward to
Good.
it, and I hope you enjoy
Good,
the
good.
symphony and all that goes well for you as
Yeah,
well.
absolutely. Yeah, wonderful. Well, Jay,
All
thank
right.
you for talking today about quality control.
Got it.
Thank you to everyone who's listened this long. This was On the Rocks. I'm Chris. He's Jay. We'll see
Have a
you
great
next
weekend,
week.
everybody. See y'all.
Bye.